Keir Starmer said last night there would be no tax surprises in Labour's manifesto, which is being unveiled later today, and pledged not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT. However, he refused to rule out other forms of tax rises when pressed by Sky's Beth Rigby. Take a look.
When you are wealthier than the king, what do you do day to day to make sure you're still in touch with the kind of struggles ordinary people face? Have you ever gone without something?
Right.
Can you give me an example of something?
All sorts of things. Like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? Famously, Sky TV.
Okay.
So that was something that we never had growing up, actually. But it was lots of things. But again, that's my experience is obviously going to be what my experience was, what is more important are my values and how I was raised. And I was raised in a household where hard work was really important.
OK, sorry, we got our clips the wrong way around. So just I'll make it clear here. That's him saying that he did go without as a child. They didn't have Sky TV. Let's have a look at the question on tax from Beth Rigby.
No tax rises in the next Parliament.
No tax rises needed in the plans in our manifesto.
In the plans?
No tax rises for working people. That's income tax, national insurance,
so you're
and VAT.
not ruling out. I just decode that for you guys, because when a politician says no plans, it does mean I might.
Well, Beth,
I've done this a bit. It does.
So he remained tight-lipped on things like capital gains tax and fuel duty, and this is what he had to say about council tax.
Council tax is too high for many people. It's been going up. It went up again this year, but that's because the government lost control of the economy.
You're not going to do a review of the council tax bands?
I'm really
You know, they were last revalued when I was a teenager, and I'm really old now.
Yeah. Beth, you're pushing me over and over again on tax. I'm not wanting to raise tax. I think people are taxed too much already. What I want to do, my central mission, is to grow the economy. I'm not going to apologise for that.
OK, so do we trust Keir Starmer to not raise taxes? Do you?
Well, first of all, no, but let me point out the elephant in the room. You know, you're all asking Labour if they're going to raise taxes, because that's what they've got a record of doing. Nobody's asked them if they're going to reduce taxes.
Well, no one's ever going to reduce taxes again, are they?
Hang on. Well, Rishi would say to you that he's Rishi-washy, would say to you that he's reduced national insurance. But leaving aside the detail at the moment, there are only two parties promising actually to reduce rather than merely not to raise taxes. One is the Conservatives, and their record is hopelessly at odds with what they're saying. And the other is Reform.
Reform being your party. But actually, the Conservatives are increasing the tax burden while reducing certain taxes. So that doesn't...
Yeah, I've said their record is against
them.
I've said that very clearly.
I'm trying to make clarification. I don't think the Conservatives are reducing taxes.
Nobody's asked Keir Starmer, and this is what I don't understand. You know, you say you won't raise taxes. Are you actually going to reduce them?
No,
because if growth is his aim, one of the biggest ways to promote growth is reduce taxes.
All right. What do you think, Bobby? Is he got some hidden tax rises?
So again, I think with the best intention, he's thinking right now in this current situation, this current sort of economic plans he has, he doesn't want to raise rates. But we know the situation changes. We know in the last few years, we had the unexpected hit of Ukraine with the energy prices. We had COVID. So things in politics, events can happen. But again, if you look at the other side, again, Anne even pointed out, with the Conservative government, from 2019 to 20 to 24 to 25, the tax burden has risen to, expected to rise to 36.5%. And that's 3.3% increase since the 2019 to 2020. And that's the biggest tax-raising parliament since 1950. So we're talking about people that raise our taxes is this current Conservative government. So I'd rather...
Anne might not disagree because you're anti-Conservative now.
Well, I mean, it's not in I'm anti-tax rises. And I will say, in their defence, and it's the only thing I will say, they did have to cope with COVID.
Yeah, I did say that external...
You know, no, hang on, and trillions of debt as a result of COVID. So they have had to cope with that. But the fact is that they have raised taxes to a record level. I mean, this is a Conservative government with record tax, record immigration, record crime.
They say furlough. If you ask them, they say, look, we had COVID, we had to double the national debt to pay for people not to work, which no one's ever had to do before in human history.
They didn't have to do it, they just did it.
Well, yeah, you raise a good point.
They didn't have to do it.
I know you were against all that. To explain this, yes, the Conservatives are putting down some taxes that they've put up, they say, But at the same time, there's this thing called fiscal drag, and you know all about this, where if they leave the thresholds the same, as our wages go up, more of our wages are caught by tax.
This fiscal drag is so sneaky because by keeping the threshold the same as people's pay rises, inflation rises, more people get caught.
But you're getting into such a weird situation where the top tax rate is now paid, or there is a higher rate for people genuinely over 100 grand, but people over 45, 50,000 are now paying the higher rate of tax.
There is only, and I'm not just batting for reform, I'm really not, I'm trying to make impartial comments.
Understood.
But there is only one party that is actually promising to address that and to get the threshold up to 20,000. And I won't say who it is, because you can work out who it is, but it ain't the Conservatives and it ain't Labour.
Although, again, my rebuttal to that is, if you know that you've got a genuine chance of being in government, you've got to make policies that are realistic and credible. If you're someone like the Green Party or other parties, you can make philosophical sort of statements without knowing that you're going to be held accountable.
The issue is this, right, is that Labour want to... They almost certainly want to spend more because they want to sort out strike action by doctors and they want to clear NHS waiting lists. Where are they going to get their money from? They're not saying tax rises. What they're saying is growth. Truss decided to get growth quickly and the economy blew up. So you can't just schedule, well, it's Monday and we'll have growth by Wednesday. Doesn't work like that, does it? You've got to wait a while.
That is quite true, Jeremy, but what you do have to consider is what stimulates growth. And I mean, one of the big things, and all economists are agreed on this, is reducing taxes stimulates growth.
Well, that's the great irony, isn't it? Bill in Manchester, do you trust Labour not to put up taxes?
No.
Well, they may have a big majority, and arguably they can then do whatever they want.
Yeah, they can. Theoretically, but 250 odd billion they're wasting on nuclear, Trident refurbished, the horrible git in the Ukraine who supported a guy who was very pro-Nazi, Stepan Banderas.
Oh, you're talking about Zelensky here, who's trying to save his country at the moment, isn't he?
The Socialist Party there. He banned Socialist Party, the Communist Party. Where's his freedom there? But that isn't it, you see. There is no defence against nuclear. 150, 100 megaton bomb. It'd knock everything out in Manchester, Greater Manchester, telecommunications.
So you don't want us to have nuclear weapons? I mean, this is one thing. Labour could say, we're getting rid of Trident, we're getting rid of everything, because we're never going to use it.
Well, if they said that, they would suffer the fate that Michael Foot suffered in '83 when he said just that. Yes, because
we've got beyond that.
People do understand in this very, very uncertain world that you need a deterrent. And that is the whole idea of
Bill, what about that? You need a deterrent.
To deter who?
Well, Putin.
Russia, for a start.
Putin sees himself in the rise of the old Tsar. The Ukraine's been the breadbasket of Europe, if not a good part of the world. He doesn't want to lose. He wants to recoup that. He wants to leave that legacy. I certainly don't think he's going to try and overstretch himself anymore. OK,
thanks, Bill. Thank you. We're going to move on. Thank you. Dave in Staffordshire, hi.
Good morning.
So we're back on Labour. Will they raise taxes?
No, he's already declared that he thinks the working man and woman are paying too much tax, so I can't see them for a minute raising taxes.
I think, George Bush Sr. in 1988 who said, read my lips, no new taxes. And then he put them up. So I'm afraid, read my lips and all that, they don't always stick to it.
And events, dear boy, events.
Yes.
Dave, come on. Why do you trust him and not others?
That's America. I wouldn't trust most things American presidents say.
Right. Good. Well, I mean, that's a good. I don't want to throw scepticism around. I think it's good. Dave is trusting. After the break, we're taking more of your calls. Do you trust Labour not to raise taxes? It comes down to whether we trust politicians when they promise anything. Now your calls on whether you trust Labour not to raise taxes. 0207 862 2222. So Keir Starmer saying last night he's not going. Basically, he's not going to. But then he wouldn't be pinned down on certain things like council tax, which went up before under Labour. Chris is in Manchester. Do you trust him, Chris?
Well, if I say I don't trust him in what he said about tax for 1 minute. Just a couple of stats, Jeremy, because they're all being thrown at us in these debates. The national debt is now equal to GDP. If we grow, I mean, he was talking about growth last night. He didn't say how he's going to do it, of course, but if we're going to grow, even by 1%, it's 25 billion quid. How on earth, and this is the only way I see of not raising taxes, if we start to balance the books on income and expenditure. How on earth can you not raise tax when the net migration figure's at 700,000? How on earth can you do that?
Well, is it, your thought is when migrants come in, they cost us money?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I do.
You might say they help grow the economy.
Public services,
Well,
housing, infrastructure, education, and above all the health
Is that true,
services.
Bobby? Or is that statistically robust?
Again, I read the Economist magazine a lot, and they're fairly middle ground. Generally, it says migration on the whole brings economic benefit. Obviously, there's other reasons about space and people think about preserving cultures, etc. But I think that argument is...
We've got a housing crisis in this country. You need to build a new house every 2 minutes to meet the
we don't build enough.
Or flats. Would that work?
Well, no, not to the extent that we need if you're going to have this continuing level of immigration.
So earlier on we had Bill in Manchester. We just had Chris in Manchester. We've now got Paul in Manchester. We've almost got we could get a football team.
Yeah.
Paul, how are you doing, my friend?
Hiya, Jeremy.
Hey.
I'm ringing up because I definitely think that Labour will do their very best not to raise taxes for the workers. But other than that, they should be raising taxes for businesses, for the super rich, because this country's in a mess. And until people realise that this country will only get better when more taxes are paid by them with the broadest shoulders, we won't get better until people get that into their heads that more tax
My understanding,
needs to be paid.
if you look at income tax, 28% of the total amount of income tax that's paid is paid by the top 1%. So... I mean, go after them. I just don't know. There's got to be at some point it stops working, though.
Well, they've got to pay the taxes because it actually affects them as well, because poverty causes a lot of mental and physical health.
I just don't know whether you can get any more out of them. That's the thing, because they might. I suppose people say they might leave. Good.
I want them to go.
Okay. get the super rich to leave.
Oh, if you look at what happened when Thatcher reduced the top rate from 60 to 40%, and everybody said that's going to cost the Exchequer, it actually caused a bounce to the Exchequer because it removed the disincentive to go offshore. It gave the incentive to take the extra risk and to put more in.
That's an argument for having tax at 1%.
At what
point does that stop working?
There are arguments both ways, but simply taxing people is never the answer. And if you tax, as Paul suggested, businesses, they go elsewhere.
Paul,
we saw AstraZeneca go to Ireland because the tax was less.
I know, but there's something that happened in our society in the last 20, 30 years, which is that we've got people we didn't have in the 70s, the super rich. And they don't, because they're not earning, they're not paying income tax, and we'll talk about this later on with the Greens policy, actually. And it's caused ill feeling. I mean, you can sense it with Paul.
Yeah.
He does want them to go or be punished. And I don't know what...
You'll end up with a poorer society if you do that.
OK, well, you maybe, but we keep being told this. And the poorest in society say we haven't got any richer. These clowns are going around in Ferraris.
Yeah, I think if people are benefiting from being associated with Britain, be it through non-dom status or whatever, they should pay their fair share. And again, what Paul said, those are the broadest shoulders should contribute the most. I feel as if in this country we tax working people a lot. Okay. Obviously, everyone should be taxed, but...
Can I just take your phrase very quickly? You said they go around in Ferraris. Ferraris have to be produced, Ferraris have to be sold. Ferrari actually creates employment.
But most,
Wake up, Jeremy.
I know.
Wake up.
I've just realised in the last 10 years, there are people who look at we have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Maseratis and cars which we didn't see on the streets 40 years ago.
And they're all producing employment.
But it is causing resentment among people who see them and think, in the way our society's set up, I will never be able to buy that car. I will never even own a house. And it's causing a sense of inequality. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if it comes to I'll never be able to own a house, that I think is something that you can tackle. I mean, I'll never own a Ferrari. I didn't want to own a Ferrari.
But the
point is, no, I wouldn't ever. But the point is that we forget sometimes that the rich do generate a lot of employment.
OK, not disputing. Yes, but. Jane in London, hi.
Hi.
Hi, well, this is interesting. We're going in all directions here. What would you like to say about Keir Starmer? Do you believe him?
I don't believe him because I've watched him now twice in 2 debates. And in one of the debates he was on last night, he said there was a poor lady, she's been on a waiting list for an NHS dentist for over a year. And she's waiting. And then what did he say? He said, well, my children do go to an NHS dentist, but me and my wife, we pay privately. And in the exact debate before that he was in, he said he would never use private services. How can we trust him now?
When I saw that, I thought that he's making a distinction between healthcare and dental care, but obviously most people don't. No, that's interesting, Jane. Good point. But you don't. So you don't trust anything he says as a result of that?
Well, I don't think I can trust him, no, because he has to. He's encouraging the politics of envy. We're talking about it now, aren't we? Yeah. People with Ferraris, people with this, people that earn more money already pay more tax. What we're saying is you want to take a higher percentage of their income. You know, it's almost like a penalty. Okay, so they're paying 50% tax, but because they've got more, why shouldn't they pay 70% tax? This is what we're discussing. They already pay more tax. Of course they do.
We're not talking here about people who are on, let's say, 100 or 150 grand. We're talking about how it is that someone like Michelle Mone makes 50 million quid in a day and whether she is paying the right amount. It's a super rich element to this, which is almost goes beyond anything we can really imagine, I think.
If you add up the wealth of the super rich and then divide it amongst the population, what do you suppose you'd come up with?
200 quid each,
yeah,
probably, or
exactly.
Thank you very much, Jane. I should say, by the way, we were saying, was Keir Starmer's dad a toolmaker? Because I'd seen people saying he wasn't a toolmaker, he was a guy who ran a toolmaking factory. We'll never get to the bottom of that. I think we've got to take that on trust. He did own a business at some point, but journalists have gone looking for the records of the business and they can't find them. So he may have gone on to a point from making tools where he had a business.
Why couldn't Keir therefore glory in the fact that he rose to that and ran his business? Why not?
Well, I don't know. You can tell me, Bobby, why is it that in our society all politicians want to tell us they come from humble roots? Why is so we've now got Rishi Sunak saying he had a terrible upbringing, they weren't allowed to watch Sky.
So I think in an ideal world, politics would be purely about the ideas, the discourse. But in the real world, we live with tangible ideas that operates within people and their I guess their upbringings. So if someone seems unrelatable because of their wealth or their upbringing, it's harder for the average person to relate to them and associate. So I think the sad reality is even Rishi Sunak, I actually think he's actually a reasonable bureaucrat. He's not a great politician at all, but his wealth means that people look at him and think, oh, he doesn't understand my problems. And maybe it can be difficult for someone that wealthy to understand everyday working problems.
Which is why we get the toolmaker thing from Sir Keir.